to the Poetry Moment, featuring Paula Meehan's poem, My Father Perceived as a Vision of St. Francis. I'm Sarah Luckadoo. As a Catholic child raised in Dublin, Paula Meehan pored over a book called The Lives of the Saints, with pictures she called terrifying. The saints with their eyes raised to heaven and arrows in their sides, or their stigmata or eyes streaming blood. All the pictures frightened the small Paula, except for St. Francis in his classic pose with arms outflung, surrounded by animals and creatures, what she called an image of great comfort. The comfort that she speaks of in this poem is her father, awake before anyone else, singing while he tends to the fire and the tea. The speaker sees her father afresh as a man who is getting older, stepping into his suburban Dublin garden. When her silver-haired father throws crumbs into the air for all the birds in a radiant sunbeam, he becomes young again, his shoulders no longer stooped, surrounding by a pandemonium of birds. In an interview on Hoko Palizzo's The Writing Life, Meehan describes her father as a quiet, gentle man who fed the birds and walked down the block to feed leftovers to the nearby factory's guard dogs. Meehan called him an unsung hero, just working his hard jobs in the tenements of Dublin and tending to his family and the animals without complaint. Meehan said the poem captured the realization that many adult children have about their parents, what she called a moment when I realized that my father was mortal. Dedicated to one of her teachers at Trinity College, Dublin, this poem was written in the 1990s. Meehan had since won many awards for her poetry, published 9 books, and has had many of her plays produced around the world. For 3 years, she served as Ireland's professor of poetry, reading and teaching at 5 institutions. Maureen Kennelly of the Irish Times said of Meehan's poetry, "I love her verbal energy and the profound compassion that I find in her work." And now, My Father Perceived as a Vision of St. Francis by Paula Meehan.
My father perceived as a vision of St. Francis. It was the piebald horse in next door's garden frightened me out of a dream with her dawn whinny. I was back in the box room of the house, my brother's room now, full of ties and sweaters and secrets. Bottles chinked on the doorstep, the first bus pulled up to the stop. The rest of the house slept except for my father. I heard him rake the ash from the grate, plug in the kettle, hum a snatch of a tune. Then he unlocked the back door and stepped out into the garden. Autumn was nearly done. The first frost whitened the slates of the estate. He was older than I had reckoned, his hair completely silver, and for the first time I saw the stoop of his shoulder, saw that his leg was stiff. What's he at so early and still stars in the west? They came then, birds of every size, shape, colour. They came from hedges and shrubs, from eaves and garden sheds, from the industrial estate, outlying fields. From Dubber Cross they came and the ditches of the North Road. The garden was a pandemonium when my father threw up his hands and tossed the crumbs to the air. The sun cleared O'Reilly's chimney, and he was suddenly radiant, a perfect vision of St. Francis, made whole, made young again in a fingless garden.